Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to this call. We're so glad you're here. My name is Mitchell Warren. I'm the Executive Director of AVAC and also the President of the TB Alliance's Stakeholder Association. And we're delighted to welcome you to the Stakeholder Association's mid-year review. Not something we've typically done, but there is so much to talk about with respect to TB research and the delivery of new innovative TB therapy that we thought it was important to step in and have a call in the middle of the year to provide updates to this community writ large. Let me first give you some quick housekeeping rules. And if we go to the next slide, we know people are joining from all over the world in different time zones and in different languages. And we do have simultaneous translations, as you can see on the slide. Just click for interpretation at the bottom of the screen. Even more importantly, we want to hear from everybody. We only have an hour together, and undoubtedly we won't get through everything and every issue. We really want to encourage everybody to put questions in the Q&A function on Zoom. I trust that after 2.5 years of this virtual reality of abnormality over the last couple of years, you all are familiar with the Zoom functions, but please do put your questions there. If we don't get to them all, rest assured we're going to be finding ways to feed back to the Stakeholder Association and to the community at large, because it is such a timely and important set of topics that we're going to discuss. And also, as you'll see there, we're going to record this so that we can make it available for people who aren't able to join live, and perhaps you want to get back and get additional updates. I did want to just say a quick word. I think many of you will know the TB Alliance well for over 2 decades now. And if you get to the next slide, pioneering TB research, working with communities, working with researchers, scientists, policymakers, product developers to really advance the development and the delivery of innovative TB therapy. It is a remarkable journey that the TB Alliance and all of us have been on as part of the Stakeholder Association. And we're delighted to have a chance today to go through some of what is new and exciting and important for everyone to understand and to hear about. If we go to the next slide, I'm very proud to have been part of the Stakeholder Association for a number of years at AVAC and very proudly serving as its president over the last couple of years. As you can see from this slide, a very dynamic and diverse group of organizations make up the Stakeholder Association, because at the end of the day, the work that we do is not about governments alone or civil society alone or product developers alone. It's about all of us figuring out how to work together. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And to do that today, if we go to the next slide, quick overview of the agenda. I know we're starting a little bit late, but what we hope to do, if you go to the next slide, over the next hour or so, is I'm going to, in just a second, introduce the president of TB Alliance, Mel Spiegelman, to give a quick overview from his perspective. We're then going to get an update of operations research, which in and of itself is very important, but we're incredibly grateful that Natalia, who I'll introduce in just a minute, from the Ukraine, is able to join us, who's really been at the cutting edge of this work. And then we'll get into a moderated panel discussion. And again, throughout that, please do feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. One of the reasons this meeting is so timely, as many of you will know, the World Health Organization has recently developed a rapid guidance about the scale-up of new TB treatment, and we really wanted to have a chance to discuss that with all of you. But before we get started with all of that, I want to very quickly introduce a new colleague, Pietro Cirilli, who has just joined the TB Alliance to lead external affairs as a senior vice president. So Pietro, just want to really welcome you to the TB Alliance, to the Stakeholder Association, and give you a chance just to say hello.
Thank you so much, Mitchell. It's a pleasure to be a part of this fantastic organization and to be interacting and working with the SHA moving forward. I'm looking forward to it and very, very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pietro. As important as the research is, as important as product development is, all of this work begins with the patient in mind. This is about being centered on the people we all seek to serve. And so we are going to start, before I introduce Mel, to have a quick video from South Africa, from Mapalesa, a TB survivor who's going to give a perspective, because that's the most important starting point. So if we could go to the video, please.
So ka be ke kula ke kena ko bara ya ke thoma re utlwa re ke na le TB se ke le weak, then ke hlatsa ka mo ke diarrhea hape se ke le theohile haholo, weak ya ka e le mo fatshe. Bona no ke bona ke le right haholo, ke thabetse research the way inthusitseng ka teng, because ne ke ka research anga be se ka research so research ke a ilebo.
Thank you, Mapalesa, and so important to have that perspective, and grateful for your participation in the clinical trial that got us to this point. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce Mel Spiegelman, who I think all of you will know, who's been the leader of the TB Alliance and more broadly a leader in TB drug development for years now. But Mel, would love to have you come and provide an update on progress at the Alliance.
Right. Mitchell, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone who has joined in this really important webinar. Today we really want to focus on the unbelievable events that have transpired over the past really few months that have led us to where we are now in terms of the potential of really providing marked improvements in treatment for drug-resistant TB. Let me go to the next slide, please. But first, let me start. For those of you who may not be familiar with the relative start of this journey, I wanted to briefly review the first trial and the subsequent events that led us up to where we are today. The first trial was called the Nyx Tb Trial for the regimen, the BPAL regimen that we're going to be discussing the ramifications of today. And the results have been published, as many of you know, in 2020. And basically, this was a study that looked at and investigated what was then called XDR-TB and pre-XDR-TB. And the bottom line result of this study was we found a 90% cure rate in this really very high risk and population that previously had extremely poor outcomes on the order of 20 to 30%. If I can have the next slide, could I have the next slide, please? Thanks. So one of the major characteristics, though, of this improvement, obviously one of the most important was the cure rates of curing patients, but also the characteristic that this led to a marked decrease in the pill burden, a marked decrease in the length of treatment from 18 months or longer when we started the Nyx Tb trial to down to 6 months, and a marked decrease in the number of pills from over 14,000 pills that a patient would have had to take, even with the poor outcomes with prior therapies at that point, down to less than 750 pills, which is still too many, don't get me wrong, but obviously just a marked improvement. So in the next slide, please. Based on, to a great extent, on the results of the Nyx Tb trial, we then filed a new drug application first with the US FDA. And as we were very pleased to hear in the deliberations of the FDA and their advisory committee, Fertilization then became the first new drug that was approved ever by the US FDA for drug-resistant TB, and that was not based on a surrogate endpoint, but on really the clinical endpoint of cure. Also, I think even perhaps much more importantly than that, it really has laid the groundwork for the acceptance because of the concept of really regimen development and regimen approval. That this is the first drug approved for the treatment of DRTB as part of a specific regimen, not just to add it on to 5 or 6 other drugs, but here is a discrete recipe, so to speak, for clinicians and programs to use. So what we had really was this 3-drug, all-oral, 6-month regimen that had been studied as a concrete regimen. If we can move to the next slide now. We certainly didn't want to stop even at that point. So immediately after the results of the Nyx Tb trial, we proceeded with multiple partners to describe even, or to try to discover even further improvements in this BPAL regimen. And all of this led up to a submission last year to the World Health Organization for further consideration in terms of guidance to countries and to others that included data from not only the Nyx Tb trial, but a successor trial called the Xenix Trial and another trial run by MSF called the TB Practical Trial. The data that was submitted to WHO included data on preclinical testicular toxicology, which had been an issue in prior considerations, in addition to hormonal changes in males specifically during clinical trials, and a paternity survey. And you'll see later why this was so important to also have all of this data. And the hormonal data has already been published, as noted on this slide, in the Union Journal. So again, and I'm conscious of the time, so going a little quickly here, if we can have the next slide, please. So in fast forwarding, this data was submitted to the WHO, and the WHO, acting in a really unbelievably rapid manner, convened a guidance development group to assess all of this data in terms of providing guidance on the use of the various BPAL regimens that had been studied. And then very expeditiously, although there's a huge amount of data that was submitted and that had to be evaluated, a rapid communication was recently issued, which included the following. and I will just read this because it's really so critical, that the 6-month BPALM regimen, which included the 3 drugs of bedaquiline, pratomanid, and linezolid originally studied, but with the addition of moxifloxacin, and importantly, linezolid now to be used at a dose of 600 milligrams rather than the originally studied 1,200 milligrams, that this regimen may be used programmatically in place of a 9-month or even longer, the greater than 18-month regimens. The next, one of the next important pieces of the rapid communication is that the regimen could be used even without moxifloxacin, just the 3 drugs of BPA-L, in the case of documented resistance to fluoroquinolones. So that even if fluoroquinolones looked like they would not be effective, the 3 drugs alone added tremendous benefit to patients. And the last piece of information that I just wanted to highlight that has come out in the rapid communication was that new data on the safety of pratomanid that was based on the hormone evaluations in 4 clinical trials, along with the paternity survey, were also assessed, and these data have largely alleviated the previous concerns on reproductive toxicity. So that forms really the basis of what we're going to hear today from the real experts in terms of those who now will be in the position of assessing what this means on the ground to patients, to TB programs as we move forward, and really trying to do what exactly Mitchell alluded to earlier. All of this work is not worth that much if we don't get it quickly to patients who need them and see the results on the ground in patients. And really my final slide, if I can have the next slide, I would be extremely remiss if I didn't acknowledge the wide group of supporters who have made this day possible to move forward from. It certainly includes all of our donors listed on this slide, but obviously also a myriad of other partners. It's not enough time certainly here to mention all of those partners, but perhaps most importantly, acknowledging the patients who have participated in our clinical trials. And certainly a great thanks to all of those patients who really potentially put their lives on the line to try something daringly new. So with that, thank you very much. The next slide. And certainly, hopefully, we'll have enough time to have some questions and answers for anybody who has them. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Mel, thank you so very much. And, you know, perhaps the most important question is, so what and what next? And that's really what we hope to do for the next 40 minutes or so. And to start that off, I'm first going to turn to another experience from a TB patient. Again, the reason we do this work, this from Maria from the Ukraine.
Працювала в Польщі я на дверях, там була дуже пилюка, дуже шкідливо, і воно так спрогресувало. Воно в мене. Я дізналася, що, як мені говорили, що я ще десь рік тому мене заразили. Почала лікуватися в Львові, 2 тижні полікувалася. Мені моя лікарка львівська сказала, що якщо я хочу, то краще лікування в Києві. Добре, вже нема такої слабкості, як хотілося, що рада. Тому що швидше вилікувалася і так не стратила часу, так, що би сказала. Та би сказала, що все буде добре, все виліковується, то з ким не буває.
Thank you so much, Maria. And obviously it is a remarkable journey that she's been on as a TB patient in the Ukraine. And of course, I want to start this next portion just to take a moment of tribute and solidarity to Maria and to Natalia, who I'll introduce in just a minute, and to all the people of Ukraine who are dealing not only with TB, as has been the case for a number of years, but obviously with the horrific events of the past many months. And so we're grateful for that involvement. And perhaps it's exactly that makes Natalia Litvinenko's presentation, which we're going to move to, so very important, because the research that Mel described only matters if we can operationalize it. And so this idea of operations research and what we do next coming out of the clinical trials is so very important. So I'm going to turn it over to Natalia now, who is the head of MDR-TB Research Center in the Ukraine, to give us a perspective on the operations research.
Dear colleagues, let me introduce myself. My name is Natalia Litvinenko. I'm working at the National TB Institute, Kyiv, Ukraine, as the head of the MDR-TB Research Center. Implementation of VIPAL were realized into operational research conditions in Ukraine, named pilot study to assess the effectiveness and safety of antimicrobacterial therapy with VIPAL in Ukraine. Operational research is carried out on the basis of the National TB Institute within the international project implemented by us, a local Ukrainian organization with KNCV technical support and Stop TB Partnership project funding. Enrollment plan in Ukraine was successfully completed. 170 patients were screened into VIPAL and 154 patients started and continued the VIPAL treatment. And 97 of them had treatment outcome before the war with Russia, before the February 2022. Treatment outcome of the Ukrainian cohort are: cured or complete treatment were received in 112 patients. It's 72.7% of patients, and plus 30 patients continued of the VIPAL now with positive prognosis without failure. Only 2 patients died and 4 patients were registered lost to follow-up. It's 3.2% of patients, and 3 patients of them interrupted VIPAL died with the VAR reason. Permanent interruptions of the VIPAL due to IS were registered in 5. It's 3.2% of patients. Adverse events among unenrolled patients were registered in 79. It's 81.4% of patients, including serious adverse reactions. And serious adverse reactions were registered in 37. It's 38.1% of them. The main of adverse events were hepatotoxicity in 24.7% of patients, myelosuppression in 38.1% of patients, and neuropathy in 25.7% of patients. In Ukraine, the following situations arose after the start of the war. Russian invasion to Ukraine on February 2022 is very aggressive. 20% of the country's territory has been occupied. Hospitals have been destroyed in some regions. Access to laboratory tests is limited, especially at the beginning of the war. And all this is accompanied by a higher migration of patients. As I said earlier, only 3 people interrupted the treatment due to the war. We were able to keep patients on treatment thanks to the video DOT and the transfers of drugs to patients with the partnership of our patients' organizations named TB People Ukraine and NTP. Thus, to keep patients on treatment in war conditions, the shortest regimen with a small amount of pills like VIPAL is optimal. Most patients are cured or complete VIPAL treatment successfully without relapses. All of them continue their daily life without restrictions. Future of the RTB treatment in routine practice in Ukraine look like will be with using new innovation TB diagnostics as the sequencing, for example, and TB treatment as BPAL and BPAL-M regimens. At the same time, our DRTB Research Center at the National TB Institute is ready to cooperate with the TB Alliance to developing other innovations in TB treatment. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Natalia. And before I welcome you and our three other panelists, we want to hear from one more patient perspective. This is from the Philippines, from Ana Cristina.
I am Ana Cristina Pelayo from Magalang, Pampanga. I was diagnosed XDR-TB 2021 and now, March 2022, I am TB-free. The first treatment I had just the first line, the 6 months, and then it didn't work. BPAL na yan. Kasi sinabi sa akin ng doktor ko na wala na akong gamot. Tapos no final nga, sinabi ni doktor na nag-improve yung lungs mo. Parang miracle na talaga.
Thank you so much, Ana Cristina. And now I'm delighted to welcome a number of people to the panel. You've already met Natalia from the Ukraine. I want to also introduce Louis Zepeda Tang, the president of TB People in the Philippines, Norbert Njeka, who's the chief director of TB Control and Management in the South African National Department of Health, and finally Subanan Sahu, the deputy executive director of the Stop TB Partnership. And I think one of the things you'll hopefully see is that this panel represents that no one organization and no one stakeholder group really can do this alone. It's all of us together. So we're going to start with the three new additions, Louis, Norbert, and Sahu. I'm going to ask you each just to very briefly, in a minute or two, describe particularly what the new guidelines that Noel described, the rapid communication from WHO, what this might mean for country-level TB programs. And maybe we'll start with you, Louis, coming out from Ana Cristina in the Philippines. You're there as well, leading the organization TB People. So why don't we start with you?
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everybody. And again, I'm Louise Zepeda Tang. I'm a TB meningitis survivor, also MDR back in 2009. And when we heard about the rapid communications, we were all excited because, of course, with what I experienced, it was 24 months of MDR treatment with injections. And we were all just amazed with the development of these regimens from the SSOR to SLOR. Now, it's just going to be 3 medications and as short as 6 months, and assisting more than 20 patients a day with my team. They're all just really asking us, what is the other option? What should we do with our anxiety, with all of our adverse drug reactions? And I think we now have good news to them. Every single day we're just really listening to all of their cries. So thank you for WHO for this rapid communications. And I know my NTP is doing their best to make sure this happens this year.
Fantastic, Louis. Thank you so much. Norbert, maybe we'll turn to you. Sitting in South Africa, another place where this is needed so urgently. Would love to hear your perspective on the rapid communication and what's next.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mitchell. This is wonderful. To us in South Africa, this is like early Christmas. It's early Christmas. We didn't believe when we got such good news, and it's not December. This will improve patients' experience. A few years ago, we removed the injectable agent, and we're very excited. And after a year or two, we picked up that the pill burden was still very high, and the patients were really have been challenges to go through 9 months treatment with a lot of tablets, 23 tablets a day. And the prospect of having 23 tablets a week is big. It's going to improve patient adherence, is going to lower loss to follow-up, and this is really a good ingredient to improve treatment success rate in the TB program. We're hoping that we'll start to report treatment success rates of 80% plus. Why not? Not long ago, we used to report less than 50%. Right now, we're sitting at somewhere between 65, 70, but 80%, 90% is not really bad. But we're also going to make a lot of savings because less drugs, less laboratory tests, less money from the patient pocket traveling to our site, and this type of regimen has potential to improve our staff ability to do the job, because it's easy to explain, and when you get excellent patient response, it really motivates staff to continue to do that. We're really excited. We're looking forward to introducing this before end of this year and begin to count our blessings here before Christmas. Thank you.
That's great, Norbert. And I know it's winter time, beginning in Pretoria, Johannesburg, so perhaps it's fitting that you got an early Christmas present, and I love how you described that. Let me turn next to you, Sa, who's sitting at the Stop TB Partnership, and get your reactions to the rapid communication and the what next question. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Michelle. I think the rapid advice from WHO was a great step forward. We are all very excited about this. I will highlight key things here, why we should be, we are actually excited, and see if others also resonate with that. Number one, I think Mel presented that this is a simple, shorter regimen. So that's very clear. I'm not going to elaborate on that. The second point, I want to elaborate a bit, and I think Norbert alluded to that. Anything that comes new, we always have a fear in our mind that it'll be more expensive, right? This regimen is not. If you look at average cost of what countries are spending on a MDR-TB or drug-resistant TB regimen, this will be less than what they are currently spending. Most countries, it's like that. So I would like to highlight that this is a new science that is coming to us, new therapy that is coming to us, which is not necessarily more expensive. So this makes sense to scale up. Number three, it is people-centered. We often think about health system. We worry about health system has procured all drugs. How do we destroy the drugs, right? But we often forget about the people-centeredness, which is very important. This regimen, as you saw, Mel presented, and Norbert, I think, also referred to, the pill burden significantly reduces. The engagement with the health system reduces to only 6 months. So great benefits for the people who are taking it. And just to end, I will say that from Stop TB Partnership, we have 4 arms that we work with new technology or therapeutics or diagnostics that come. Number one, you heard Natalia, the Ukraine, she talked about the study there, the operation research. That was funded by Stop TB Partnership, TB Reach initiative. So TB Reach funds in innovations. We actually wanted to fund more, but we couldn't do that. And we look forward for future how to create further improvements in funding some bits and pieces of research around this. The second is the global drug facility. Countries can buy now this drug. The prices are listed there. All you have to do is to send the request to Global Fund and follow it through. Send the request to Global Drug Facility and then follow through with the process. The third, we play a big role in advocacy. The Stop TB Partnership has a global advocacy component, but also has importantly in strategically important big countries, we have country advocacy work, and we are already doing this work to highlight new therapeutics, diagnostics, and how to scale up, and we will do it further. And the fourth piece, we have a team that provides technical assistance to countries, and when we come further in the discussion, I will tell you also about the opportunities that are coming up, very important in the next few months, that we can provide technical support to countries to build their national strategic plans and the Global Fund proposals in such a way that this is included and with good ambition to scale it up. Thank you.
Great, Sahu, thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for such great comments and doing it very quickly so we can get to the questions that are already beginning to roll in, and I'll encourage all of the participants in the call to continue to post your questions here. I want to pick up on something you just said, Sahu, about this being such a people-centered approach, and maybe turn to you, Louis. You know, we think of obviously people who need the medication as the recipients of drugs, but you've started an organization really driving people-centered approaches. And I wonder if you could just spend a minute talking about the role that civil society and particularly patient advocates can play, not only in getting access to the drug, but in really thinking about operationalizing these guidelines and the role of community groups.
Yes, I can share to you one story that happened 3 weeks ago. We were assisting somebody, a person with TB who's also a senior citizen, and we went to do a virtual assistance to the patient. And then apparently the health worker said, I can't enroll the person because she doesn't have a voter's ID. So these are the things, small things that we have to really make sure it's what do you call this, clarify what is the request policy that NTP gave you. Apparently no, there are no requirements. Wherever the person is affected, we have to enroll them. The requirements will just come after. So our role there would be just to monitor if these kinds of situations are happening. And once the redevelopment happens for the BPAL, once it becomes part of also the primary care, we have to be there to monitor and make sure that the process is followed by these health care providers, make sure that all of our person-centered care is really followed. Also for persons like me who have a disability, make sure that they know how to assist us, make sure that they give the reasonable accommodation. And we have to really, make sure that these health care providers understands all of these new regimens, that we will be there to monitor them.
That's great, Louis. I think this issue of monitoring is so important. And it's a great reminder that for all the wonders of the pills, the regimens, it's not the product, it's the programs that really deliver it. And so you said that so well.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a great segue to, I would love to hear both Norbert and Natalia at the country level. You know, in terms of taking this forward, a question came in for you, Norbert, about how South Africa goes from, you know, a recommendation from WHO into actual scaling this up at the country level.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I think for us, what's really critical is preparation, and we can't wake up and say, look, we were not prepared, because we've been aware of BPAL, a lot of the data came from South Africa. A lot of our people have really contributed to this, and we really want to be the first program to roll this out, you know, routinely, because I mean, that's the least we can do for our people who have contributed to be part of this. So what we're doing is preparations. We've been preparing for a couple of years. In fact, we have decided to scale up our BPAL clinical access program to the remaining 5 provinces and the new scheme. So now it won't be another research. It is going to be programmatic implementation. We've been talking to our partners, particularly CHAI, to support us with the program. And they've given us most of what we need in terms of cost for training. We should be trained. We've spoken to all our provinces to ask what are they need, so we know exactly where the gaps are. Fortunately, we have some money from Global Funds to buy drugs. All the drugs are registered in the country, which is good, including Pretomanate. So what we're trying to do now is to purchase Pretomanate, but also get a green light from the National Health Council, which is the body made up by Director General and heads of departments of all our provinces. So once we get a green light, that will automatically means we get the drugs purchased, and then we can implement. Otherwise, in terms of funds, we could we have some money from Global Fund, like I indicated, and our provinces have funds as well. We have a conditional grant, which is government money to support new initiatives. So we're pretty good to go. I'm sure we are on the right track regarding preparations towards implementation. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. And I think understanding each of those steps is really, really important. Natalia, again, thank you so much for being here, and our thoughts are with you. I wondered, you talked about the operations research in your presentation. Can you say a word or two about how you transition from operations research into actual programmatic usage? And I think a lot of people have asked questions about the distinctions there. And I wonder if you could just maybe elaborate on that.
Thank you very much for this question. It's very important because operational research conditions, it's a very strong monitoring, very strong prescribed for regimens, and for programmatically we may to improve these approaches. If we made these approaches in operational research conditions, and we made to improve these approaches in routine practice too, in full, because if in routine practice we don't have, for example, strong monitoring, we will receive not very good results, and we don't receive this high treatment efficacy, for example, 90 favorable outcomes. And very big important, it's understanding for patients about these treatment regimens. And very important to improve for patients psychological support. All of patients need psychological supporting and need to receive information about this regimen. All of patients may to understanding about what this regimen more better for them. For example, we may discuss with our patients about comparative analysis, 9 months treatment, 6 months treatment, 18 months treatment, and patients may understand it. And BPAL and BPAL-M, it's more better for patients now. And patients may understand it. And if they understand, we don't have a problem with patients' compliance for BPAL and BPAL-M. But it may improve, psychological support may improve in routine practice too, not only operational research conditions. And information about adverse events for patients. It's very important. Patients may understanding about different kinds of adverse events, grades of and levels of symptoms, adverse events, and doctors, nurses, medical services may have one level with patients, and we may to speak with patients as a friend, not patients and doctors.
It's so important, Natalia.
We made to do with patients only as friends. And if it will be, we will have very good compliance with patients and not problem for improve this regimen. For example, in our site, we don't have very high level of loss to follow-up, for example. Only 5 people had lost, we registered loss to follow-up, but 3 of them, it's one reason. And only 2 patients lost to follow-up in another reason.
That's such a great point, and I think it picks up on something Norbert said as well about the opportunity for this simplified regimen to increase adherence. I think, Norbert, you talked about going from 50 to 80%, and Natalia seeing that as well. We did have a great question, and I hope I don't mispronounce the name too badly, from Yemen's national TB program, Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Bari, who's asking a question. Maybe I'll start with you, Sahu. A question about, is operations research, is it always needed? Is it the requirement? And can we now use the BPAL regimen without operational research? And I wonder if you have thoughts on that from your perch at the partnership.
Yeah, so I think with the current guidance from WHO, it is possible to use it without going through any operation research. If you recall, the previous guideline of WHO was to do this BPAL regimen under operation research conditions. The rapid advice doesn't say so. The rapid advice says you implement it in a programmatic mode. In fact, most patients in a country would be eligible for such a short 6-month BPAL or BPAL-M regimen. So I would recommend to go ahead and have a full-scale implementation in the programmatic mode. Now, I am aware that countries have their own regulatory mechanisms. They have committees that make guidelines. We need to see that these guidelines, if necessary, at a country level to adapt and adopt that regimen, that committee or whatever that body is there should be able to meet and give the recommendations, national recommendations quickly to scale it up in a programmatic mode. Thank you.
Great. No, that's so helpful. So I think this issue of obviously countries needing to figure out what's best for them, but that it's not seen as a requirement. So really great point there. Norbert, I wonder if you want to pick that up at all from the South African experience. And as you rightly said, South African patients generated a lot of the data around these trials. There has been operations research. Are there things that you're thinking about on how to go faster that might be good lessons for other countries as well?
Yeah, no, I think what we need to do to move faster is number one, talk to the committees, and so picked up a very important point where you find that in countries there are committees that have to review evidence that has been reviewed well by the World Health Organization, which is made of all of us. So these are things we need to be looking at and begin to talk to our bosses and say that we need to align with the World Health Organization. We're part of those decisions. The other area is the guidelines. Many countries wait till guidelines are revised, agreed upon, checked by committees. A lot of committees printed. Then we do training. That is, it can take a year to take that approach. What we want to do, we want to start doing in South Africa is to make guidelines that are in modular form to an extent that we change the portion that has changed. We know that our case finding is been aligned with our TB recovery plan for a while. We don't have to change anything. Laboratory diagnosis is not changed. Laboratory follow-up is not changed. Now, while changing that, you're changing the regimen. So we're looking at issues around the actual area that needs to be changed, but also one of the things that our Director General has done is to appoint the expert committee to advise the TB program on how to deal with DR-TB issues. And this committee has been very supportive over the many years that we've been working with. And yeah, I think that's some of the things that can be done. And recently we had a meeting, I think last week or so, with where we invited 7 different TB programs from around the world to share experiences. And all the program managers committed to say, this is something that we need to do collectively in our countries. And it was very exciting to see that people really want to change things. They want to move with this. And then I'm hoping that we'll see every one of these 7 programs, move with this new recommendation soon. Thank you.
That's fantastic. And in fact, I was going to ask about the cross-country fertilization. So I think that's so great to hear about those 7 countries coming together. Mel, I wanted to bring you in. There was a question from back to your presentation from Christian Auer about the evidence. You said there was a shift from the 1,200 milligram dose to a 600 milligram dose. And question about what's the evidence for that?
Oh, great. Yeah, no, thank you. So we did a trial, the Xenix trial, which randomized patients to 4 different arms, which included not only 1,200 versus 600, but also different durations of therapy, whether it was the full 6 months or 2 months. And to cut to the chase, and hopefully all this work will be published, we hope, in the very near future, as we've submitted it already, and I think it's very close to being accepted in a journal. But the bottom line was what we saw with 600 versus 1,200 was the same basic efficacy in terms of the percent of patients who were cured, but a marked decrease in the side effects, especially the peripheral neuropathy, but also the anemia, the hematologic side effects. So we have the situation, 600 is basically the same in terms of efficacy, but much safer. So that was the underpinning, that clinical trial for our conclusion, which then was confirmed by the guidance development group and is now in the rapid communication.
Great, Mel, thank you for that. And it's exciting and another great lesson of the iterative nature of this. It's never just one trial, it's the accrual over time, and so helpful. I wanted, Louis, maybe to come back to you. There was a great comment, I don't know the person's name, but from someone from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, talking about the issues of stigma and discrimination. This person, I think it's Willie Nzungudi, both being a TB and a COVID-19 survivor, but talking about the suffering from stigma and discrimination. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts, just before we end, about the role of simplified regimens perhaps in reducing stigma and discrimination, and if there's a relationship there about the way forward. Louis, you're on mute if you are speaking.
Yes. So in terms of the stigma and discrimination, actually, that's going to be the solution, because not everybody knows that TB is still present, and not everybody will accept right away that they have TB, that they have clinical evidence of the bacteria. And once you start talking about the STB, all of these regimens, and to the newest and better option, BPAL, they wouldn't really give you the ear right away. So I'm very thankful actually for TB Alliance for giving me the opportunity to do TB education online, the one I'm doing right now. And I was able to get 2,600 followers now because of our laymanized version of all of the regimens being done in the country. And also thank you to Stop TB Partnership for the CFCS that we were able to get. Now I'm looking for more leaders around the country to make sure that we can be approached by anybody who have these inquiries, who have these notions that they cannot have it because they're not a bad person. So we have a lot of these stigma still going on, and it's going to be a long ride. We just really have to make more leaders, to make them spokesperson, and then make sure that they understand the algorithm of the country and all of these international relations documents that we can definitely study and make sure everybody in these grassroots level will be able to understand.
Louis, that is fantastic. And as we come to a close, you picked up on what I was going to ask for each of you at the end. And we had an amazing comment from Jadado Mustafa talking about, and it really is more of a comment than a question, about the need to collectively move more quickly from policy to education to stakeholder engagement. So I wondered if I could ask each of you just in the last minute or two to give us a quick 30-second, what do you hope happens between now and Christmas for Norbert at the end of the year and into 2023? What's the next most important thing that needs to happen? Maybe we'll start with you, Natalia.
Thank you. In the next year, we may to use BIPAL and BIPAL-M in routine practice. And for example, in Ukraine, we start use BIPAL, but in July 2022, because we receive Pritamanid, and Pritamanid in Ukraine now. And approximately 1,000 courses of Pritamanid we have in Ukraine now. But we start to use BIPAL for operational research conditions. It will be new operational research, and all of our regions made to start as operational research using BIPAL, and it will be first step. After we will receive WHO recommendations about using BIPAL and BIPAL-M in routine practice, because our government not understand if we use now in routine practice, because we don't have WHO recommendations now. And if we receive, for example, in September, WHO recommendations, we use in routine practice BIPAL-M2. Yes, but it will be second steps for us. And first step it's BIPAL in operational research conditions in July 2022.
Great. Natalia, thank you again. Norbert, the next most important thing.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get Pritamanid to 3,000 individuals within the next 2-3 months. And of course, the green light for our boss, our Director General, because the plan is approved. So we have funds. We now need paperwork and Pritamanid to hit the hopes. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Sahu, the next most important thing from your perspective.
Yes, I think a 6-month BIPAL or BIPAL-M regimen should become the norm in DRTB treatment and no longer an exception. And I would end by requesting all countries who want to change to this new regimen should take advantage of their Global Fund grants. They can be reprogrammed, and we can help you to get the additional money if required. We can also help if there are some issues related to what do you do with your procured drugs. And we must also remember that next year, beginning, new funding cycle for Global Fund is starting. A lot of countries are getting prepared to prepare new applications for Global Fund. So please use that opportunity, and we are available for any support required. Thank you.
Sahu, that's so great. I love that call to action. I'll just add one piece to that. We obviously are right in the midst of the Global Fund replenishment. So all TB advocates, all HIV advocates, all malaria advocates, the more we do to mobilize for Global Fund replenishment, the more resources we can tap into, as Sahu just described. So fantastic. Mel, last thought, most important thing?
to really motivate at the grassroots, bottom up, top down, in terms of really moving this forward in a very holistic way that's patient-centric, that's also healthcare system-centric, and winds up with totally changing the face of drug-resistant TB.
Fantastic, Mel. Thank you. And Louis, I want you to have the last word before I wrap up. The next most important thing.
I'm so thankful for all of the international support that my group is getting. Now, TB People Philippines has a lot of audience, and we are, I think, very effective in giving them the right information. Everybody's now on the lookout when this BPA will happen in the country. And I think the best thing that will happen is, of course, health system strengthening. TB People is now also part of the conversations in our Global Fund CCM. We will help bring up all of these concerns that we're getting from the ground. And before all of our redevelopment happens by 2024, I hope that we will be able to really instigate the proper implementation of this program, this new regimen. And we really want to make sure that this whole redevelopment is going to be with all of the votes of our local chief executives, our mayors, because it's going to be a lot of work for us, residents, stakeholders, survivors, advocates, to lobby to each one of them to make sure that this program will be localized and properly implemented. So thank you, everyone.
Great, Louis, thank you. Thank you all. I think each of you in remarkable ways displayed the critical importance of going faster and going together in translating what is exciting science into public health impact. And I'll just say, as someone who works more on the HIV side than on the TB side, just the opportunity to see how collectively we take scientific advances and make them programmatic realities. And we're seeing it certainly in now a new TB regimen. We're seeing it in COVID. We see it in HIV with the prospect of a new form of pre-exposure prophylaxis. But it's always about how do we translate those products into programs that are system and people-centered. And so we've got a lot of work to do together, but I think you've all given us a remarkable to-do list and remarkable motivation to get moving faster together. So I want to thank you all who joined the panel. I want to thank all of you on the line and members of the Stakeholder Association for joining in this. This is one of the most remarkably challenging but remarkably opportune moments in global health, both for TB and for broader sets of global health issues. And the TB community really can be at the forefront, not only of making this simpler regimen a reality for people, but also showing us how we can go faster with guidance, with operations, research, and to impact. So I want to thank you all. I want to wish you all good health and safety. And I look forward to many more opportunities to convene, and hopefully soon we will convene in person, because I think we all have been on screen a little too long these last 2.5 years. But stay safe and well, and please do keep questions and comments coming to the Alliance and to the Stakeholder Association, and we'll go forward together. Cheers on.
Thank you. Thank you.
you.